explain to Canadians, voters, and the financial markets what it means for the government to set a fiscal target if it is going to continually change them or ignore them when they no longer are sufficient in your view or no longer meet your spending needs? What is the point of what you say in April if it changes by November, December? And what consequence should you or the government face for not meeting these goals that you yourself set?
Hi, Minister Freeland. I just want to make sure I understood what you said at the opening. So you talked about the debt to GDP ratio, but part of that fiscal anchor as well was keeping the deficit last year at or below 40.1 billion. And as you know, the PBO and many economists we've talked to believe that you exceeded that when we see the final numbers. Did you say that you expect you will hit that point of the fiscal anchor as well, that last year's deficit was at or below 40.1?
Thank you for the precision in your question, Brian. And I chose my words also precisely. So let me sort of restate for clarity the debt to GDP ratio and a declining debt to GDP ratio. And that is so critical because that is really a way of saying our public finances are sustainable. If your debt is declining as a share of the economy, by definition, your fiscal position is sustainable, and that is really important. I expect that when I table the numbers on Monday, I will show that the debt to GDP ratio, which we forecast in the 2024 budget for the 23-24 fiscal year, will be met.
Morning. Does your government still think it's important to shrink the federal deficit?
I was careful and precise in my comments about the debt to GDP ratio. Maintaining a declining debt to GDP ratio is our fiscal anchor. That is important. That is how we maintain sustainable public finances. When it comes to the deficit, Canada has the lowest debt to GDP ratio and the lowest deficit in the G7, and that's important too.
Freeland, today you're very clearly signaling that you will not meet one of your three deficit guideposts, as you called them, or debt fiscal guideposts, as you called it in the spring budget. In the spring budget speech, you said it was responsible to have very specific, fiscal guideposts, including limiting the deficit to 40.1 billion or lower. So are you saying you're now comfortable going past that?
So I am not going to comment on anonymous rumors that are out there in the town right now. No, I'm not going to comment on anonymous rumors that are out there in the town. I offered something very clear information on what I expect when it comes to the debt to GDP ratio. And so the fact that that inflation has been within the Bank of Canada's target range for all of this year is material. I'm going to quote the governor of the Bank of Canada from an appearance in the Senate Banking Committee in October when he said, "We're no longer trying to get inflation down. Government spending is not pushing against us getting inflation down. We've got it down." So that is also a really important fact about where the Canadian economy is right now.
Can you explain to Canadians, voters, and the financial markets what it means for the government to set a fiscal target if it is going to continually change them or ignore them when they no longer are sufficient in your view or no longer meet your spending needs? What is the point of what you say in April if it changes by November, December? And what consequence should you or the government face for not meeting these goals that you yourself set?
I think actually I've been saying exactly the opposite of where your question is driving. What I've said today, precisely and with care, is that when we table the numbers on Monday, we expect that the debt to GDP ratio for 23-24, which we set out in the 2024 budget, will be met. And that is important because the fiscal anchor is a declining debt to GDP ratio. And that is important because a declining debt to GDP ratio means your public finances are fiscally sustainable.
Thanks, Mr. Freeland and Mr. Fraser. I'd like to get your comments on this. Pierre Poilievre proposed cutting the GST on new home sales up to, I believe, $1 million. The current exemption, it's a gradual scale, goes up to $500,000, and you do not get reimbursed after that point. Obviously, home sales have skyrocketed in value. It's kind of been the reason that you two have pointed to in terms of increasing the maximum insured rate for mortgages. Why not increase that percentage when it comes, the value of a home that you can get your reimbursement on the GST like Mr. Poilievre is proposing?
And I never want to take different potential solutions off the table when it comes to what we may do next to help build more homes and help deliver affordability. When you look at the role that the tax system can play in helping drive supply, we can point to the fact that we've removed the GST on purpose-built rentals and seen almost immediately an increase in the number of apartments that were being constructed. A lot of projects that were on the bubble ended up penciling out and going ahead as a result of that change. We don't want to, for example, pull potential capital out of a solution that could be building 4 units on a given property and instead have it go to a single home that's worth more in value but provides fewer homes to the overall supply. So these are the kinds of assessments that we conduct routinely to understand the impact that different measures would have. And as we look forward to introducing further measures to build more homes, we'll be comparing proposals around the tax system as compared to the output that we think different measures with the same capital could potentially have.